Okay, so the next session is an interactive session with Pratap Raju. He's the founding partner of Climate Collective and PR Climate Studio. Pratap has been very early in the game in the climate action and sustainability ecosystem since 2008. He's seen it all in the kind of companies that have been started, the kind of companies that have a future, the kind of opportunities in the field. And he's going to do a 30-minute session with us, 20 minutes of him showing us the landscape, and then a 10-minute Q&A with Arjun Gupta, the founder of Smart Jewels. Over to you, Pratap.
All right, great. Thank you. And thanks for this opportunity. I love what SusMafia is doing. These are the kinds of initiatives we really need. I started in Cleantech 11 years ago. I don't know if I've seen it all. I've seen quite a bit. There's been quite a bit of transformation over the last 11 years in Cleantech in India. I'm going to do an interactive session on a tool called AHA Slides, which is similar to Slido. Please do log into that URL, or you can use this one up on top, AHA Slides/opportunity. Cut off. So before I start, let me just share a little bit about Climate Collective. We've been around supporting cleantech startups since roughly 2015. Although I started as a solar wind developer in 2009, just at the beginning of the National Solar Mission. Sorry, my slides are not moving. There we go. Very quickly, we are an accelerator. So we basically help clean tech startups across clean energy, circular economy, carbon tech, etc. After they finish their incubation phase or product development, and before they get to growth phase through a series of accelerators like Climate Ready for Women, Climate Launchpad, Climate Runway, and we're just about to launch our first fund for early stage pre-series A startups called Climate Seeds. We work with the European Union Climate Kick, which is our big program, Climate Launchpad as well as on the clean energy side with New Energy Nexus, with a long-time player from California supporting clean energy startups across the world. And we work with state governments and others throughout India on several programs. And lastly, the last 3 years, we have really scaled up, and almost 400 startups have come through either one of these three programs since 2018, and we are trying to reach 300 startups a year by 2022. And that's what I've seen compared to 10 years ago. There is an explosion of interest in entrepreneurship for solving clean tech problems or environmental problems. So now, how do we save the planet? Okay, what are these opportunities? Are they real for us if we want to be entrepreneurs? There's many things we need, of course. We need activists, we need nonprofits, we need policy researchers, we need investors, and we need big companies, but also entrepreneurs. Let's see. Maybe I'm going to just start off with just a question, and just to get a reading of the room. This is a word cloud, just type in what you feel. What are our chances of succeeding in this fight against climate change? What does it feel like? Does it feel hopeless? Does it feel like exciting? Maybe. Does it feel maybe the word is frustrated? All right. And in fact, this is pretty common, is that we get a wide range of feelings about what the future will behold, mainly because it's the future. It's an old saying, is it's hard to predict. No, actually, I forgot that quote. I would say one thing from one of the previous speakers about renewable energy, right? We talk about this fight against fossil fuels, at least in the power sector. We've won that battle. In the last 10 years across the world, in almost most countries in the world, it's solar and wind and renewables that are the dominant investment in new power generation technology or plants in India, in the US, etc. That doesn't mean we're done. It just means that what looked hopeless just 10 years ago or 15 years ago, in fact, looks very promising now. Our work still is cut in front of us. There's a lot of great responses here. So I do live by this quote by St. Augustine, a early Christian church father. Nothing great has ever been achieved without hope. So that's kind of my motto. Now, let me ask another question. Having said that we want to some degree in solar, wind, and new power plants being built, what do we need now? We need to get to net zero emissions very quickly. What do we need? Do we need more money? Do we need stronger leaders, better policy, or innovation? Well, and this is a great point, is that it's a multifaceted approach we need, right? Whether it's money, leaders, we need it all, right? And one thing that, although maybe it's because I am speaking here on innovation, maybe the scores are a little higher for innovation, we do sometimes forget how important innovation is. I did mention solar and wind. For example, 90% or something near like that of all new power plants are built on renewables in many countries in the world, but we're starting to hit limits. What are these limits? How do we get more intermittent solar wind into the grid, that fluctuating power supply? That requires some technology on like forecasting, scheduling of power. How do we get more solar plants in areas where water is becoming an increasing problem? Maybe those new robots that kind of clean panels at much less usage of water. This requires innovation. So even though we do need everything else, innovation may help us in extending further the paths to sustainability using technology. Right. Now I'll show you this graph from IEA that came out. This is a sort of a map IEA as an International Energy Agency. This is a map that looked at how innovation is needed to reach our net zero emissions target by 2070, looking at technology. The interesting thing here is that mature technology is only a small percentage, about 15% of the technology that we already have to reach this goal in their analysis. A large portion of this, right, are solutions that haven't been developed, that haven't been demonstrated yet. Basically working in someone's home right now. Let me show you something else. This is 2070. I don't know if I'll be around in 2070, but I think if we are going to take a more aggressive approach, which we need, if we're aiming for 2050, the need increases for new technologies, things that are not, of course, mature like a solar panel, are already in the market getting early adoption, right? So to some degree, even even though we don't talk about it too much because we talk about the need to change policy and education, innovation is going to play a role in helping us reach our targets. Okay, startups. Why not big companies? Why not big global engineering giants like Schneider Electric? Why couldn't they do it? Right? Let's see. Let me ask. This is another quick question. How many climate tech startup unicorns are there? Anybody know this answer? Unicorn is normally used as a term for a $1 billion plus valuation. Right. Right. So the thing about climate tech is oftentimes it doesn't get as much press as the Flipkarts or the Amazons, etc. Right. The answer is this is as of last year, according to a PwC report, 43. And that's a very recent 43. The numbers are increasing fast. And before I tell you some, let me ask, maybe this is a word cloud again. What are some large climate tech or clean tech startups you've heard of? Oh, I got to open submissions. There we go. Arcadia, your great Renew, Suzlana. Some of these are more the manufacturing side or the power generation side. There's a big one out there that we all know because maybe a clue. I think he's the 5th richest guy in the world. Well, Vikram Solar, Ether now, yeah. So we're talking about more like technology companies. A lot of these are project companies, but still there. These are still examples of very large companies that didn't exist 10 years ago. Tesla, yeah, that started before Elon Musk bought into the company. Started in someone's living room. It didn't come out of General Motors or Toyota R&D team. Beyond Burger or Impossible Burger, which is now being carried by McDonald's, right? 43 and is just starting, and this is quite exciting. Maybe a last example here. Now we always talk about what if when I started a clean tech company a long time ago, we didn't get much support from the environment, or at least, but we got a lot of pats on the back. In fact, in our program, we call climate entrepreneurs puppies because nobody's mean to us. They like what we're doing. They won't give us money often. They won't buy our products, or they won't invest in us back then, at least. But they would always appreciate the good work we're doing, right? How much money do you think now? This is on just one aspect of startups, not the sales. How much money has come into climate tech startups globally last year in 2019? Oh, sorry, gotta open that up. Right. Okay. So I see quite a few numbers here on the bigger numbers, billion, right? So 1 at 10 billion. According to this same PwC report that just recently came out, $16 billion, 1/6. Right, that's a massive number just for early stage investment in startups. Right, put in perspective, this is 6% of all classes of startups. Everything you can think of, from AI to consumer internet to food delivery to everything. Right, and it's $60 billion over the last 7 years, not including this year. So it is on a massive upswing. When I started my business, we didn't have any of this. So I feel like I started way too early, but that's okay. Right. And you may have seen recent news like Amazon's $2 billion climate fund. Microsoft has a $1 billion climate fund as well to invest. Unilever just announced a $1 billion fund as well, likely in areas that in which they operate, maybe around plastics and packaging. These are just starting. It's an exciting time in that sense. So before I didn't time my thing, Anirudh, but maybe just a few more minutes. I just want to share with you some very cool startups that we've seen in India in our program. Now we've heard about EVs, but we have a huge stock of existing vehicles like rickshaws. So instead of selling new EV rickshaws, a lot of people like Nikola Motors are just selling retrofit kits, right? They're selling a kit at a fixed price, 30,000 rupees. The payback to the rickshaw is extremely fast. In fact, I just came across, I got to verify this, but there's 1.1 million or 11 lakh electric rickshaws in Bangladesh, right? I think this is something that we're going to see in how we approach our electromobility through retrofits to EVs and maybe electric bikes more than cars, but it's happening at a very fast pace. And of course, this is very positive for us too, especially as our grid becomes cleaner and cleaner. Other examples we're seeing is a lot more people taking waste products. In this case, these guys at Insulite, they take fly ash, that's created by coal power plants, which oftentimes is dumped into villages like where I'm from outside of Visakhapatnam. Seeps into the water table there. They take that material and create raw material for ceramic manufacturers. It's very straightforward. It doesn't mean technology is straightforward, but the idea that we can all understand taking a waste. You can make many products out of this, of course, and it has a very big impact. Now, before going, I don't want to say that we should always think about solving waste problems by upcycling. Maybe there's better ways, redesigning our initial products so we don't have waste. But this is not an either or in entrepreneurship. We have today's problems and we have tomorrow's problems, so we can tackle both. We need to tackle both. Similarly, Broken Blooms, they do something very similar. They take devotional flowers in Banaras, that's thrown into the Ganga, which has a bad impact on marine life as well as general water pollution. Then they make fertilizer and sell it to farmers. Then they realized when they came to our program that farmers don't have too much money and it's not very lucrative. The price is very low. So they thought through their product, redesigned it very cleverly to sell the same fertilizer to upper middle class homes in Delhi with garden terraces. They're no longer selling just fertilizer. You can buy fertilizer anywhere. They're selling that connection to holiness through Banaras at a 5 times the price. And in fact, perhaps there is a connection to sustainability as well, the values of sustainability. It's hard to tell, but what we try to do is figure out, help startups figure out how do you increase customer value or business value so you become sustainable? Because without having a sustainable business, you can't have an impact. A quick last example of this is some of the big impact that Brook and Blooms can do across the field. Maybe last example, which I alluded to last time, is sometimes we always think about products, right? Sometimes things, machines to solve our problems, but in fact, a lot of our behavior also needs to change and be more climate friendly. So Eco Karma, what they do is they try to reward eco-friendly behavior through these social cues, right? They basically post these Eco Karma points and ask people to post their climate-friendly behavior on social media. And it comes from this insight that sustainability is not an individual value, it's oftentimes a community value. So the way when more and more people are doing it, it makes you more likely to also be adopt the same sustainable behaviors, etc. So their focus is on sustainable fashion, where the upcoming sustainable fashion products really want to reward this behavior that Eco Karma is trying to adopt or push amongst their users because it's good for them. So this is an example of where we don't just talk about technology, but it's oftentimes how do we change behavior or behavioral values around sustainability in a business model. Oh yes, I already talked about the Climate Collective, but I just want to end with a great quote, which I normally end is, the best way to predict the future is to create it. So I do hope that everyone does explore entrepreneurship. I think it may not be for everyone, but for those that do, this environment is increasingly supportive of your efforts to take risk and your time and your resources and your heart to make a big change as well.
Thank you, Pratap. That was very, very enlightening, because it's rare to actually get an ecosystem layout the way that you've structured it, and a lot of your questions to the audience were quite shocking, because I realized most of the answers that we had were wrong. Nobody knew how much money is going into climate finance. Nobody really knew what kind of companies are there, with the exception of maybe the 6-7 popular names. In that perspective, I'll ask Arjun to unmute and have a 10-minute Q&A with you.
Great.
Thanks, Anirudh. Thanks, Pratap. That was amazing as usual. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, nice to see you.
I wanna ask you some questions that I think you'll have the best perspective on, given all the stuff that you do in the climate space. First, some things related to the current state of affairs, and then in the second leg we'll go a little more looking into the future. So, can you give us an idea of climate innovation in India in terms of quantity? So, you showed some statistics of innovation around the world. Tell us about what's happening in India. How many startups are coming out? How much money is going in? Just the quantity first.
Right. I don't think we have a number. I think it's about 2%. That's sorry, this math very quickly. 2% of that number, 16 billion. So 320 million goes into India and climate tech. We're a very early nascent startup ecosystem. what I see in our program, we have a lot of people who join, almost 200 who are post incubation, pre-revenue. So and I'm sure we still haven't found all the places where entrepreneurs are coming up. I can share that the other ecosystem players are very interested in this space. When I talk to the angel investment groups, one of the big ones, told me that the number one focus, not a great focus, of their angel investors is sustainability, and it's backed by their deals. And this is shocking because we sometimes forget that when we talk about climate as a investment class, we're competing against AI to consumer internet, everything. So I believe that our environment's becoming fast in supporting and wanting to support startups. And maybe I can add the reason why is 10 years ago, a lot of craziness happened in Silicon Valley with clean tech. I think almost 60% of Silicon Valley went into clean tech, I think in 2010 or something like this. Most of it wasted. Today, they focus on money making, business value, rather than some fancy organic solar cells that never will come to the field. But now is, how do you solve a client's problem, especially B2B, or a consumer's problem very directly? So I think it's a maturity in the startup space globally as well that's attracting the support.
Can I ask one question to Pratap? Sorry. Okay.
I'll request you to hold your question for later. We have a bunch of them lined up already. Thank you. Thanks, Pratap, for that. So 2% is what we're getting. You're seeing around 200 applicants, and I'm sure there's a lot more companies out there. So that's great.
We're getting 800 applicants. We accept 200.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah.
That's really great to hear. So let's dig in a little bit into that, Pratap. Within what you see into the ecosystem, 800 applicants you're seeing, and others in the space as well. Where is there a focus of geography? Maybe 2-3 areas where most of the innovation is coming from, or is it quite widespread? So both in terms of geography in India and also in terms of the nature of startups that are coming out. You find that a lot of them are solution startups, can you give us an idea about the actual hard engineering and science-based startups? What is the fraction of that we see in the 800? Are we doing well there? So please dig in a little bit more there.
Right. All right. No, that's a good question. In fact, if you look at the startups in clean tech coming from R&D, we're generally weak in India. For example, I do entrepreneurs a PhD. And they normally turn their thesis into a clean tech idea. We do have that here in India as well, but it's a smaller number. I think though, it's okay, because we have a market, we have a need. For example, a lot of our batteries come from China when it comes to EV startups here. We don't develop them here largely. I don't think that's the question we should ask. I think the question we should ask is, can people take the current scenario, whether their technology comes from elsewhere, build defensible businesses? And that's, I think, what we're starting to see, the quality of startups increasing. Having said that, over the years, the quality of startups from a technology point of view is increasing. That's for sure. And having said that as well, the number of green entrepreneurs who are not technology based. For example, the number of upcycling businesses, which may not be defensible, large, scalable businesses, is exploding throughout India. Right, and that's great for us, especially in times of COVID. So I think we are seeing both quality of technology coming into startups as well as green entrepreneurs both.
Amazing. Thanks for sharing that. Now, I guess my next question is about quality. We talked about quantity and we're doing pretty well there. You've worked elsewhere, not only in India. So when you look at the quality of startups that are coming out of India, is it a reason for optimism and hope that India is going to play a leading role? Or do you feel like, for various reasons, we're like struggling, kind of trying to be there, but that 2% number that is coming to us in terms of investment is justified because our game is not strong enough? What do you think? Where are we?
Yeah, that's a great question. These are all sensitive questions. Because we do have a lot of pride here in India, but very bluntly, Nobody is a better clean tech entrepreneur than the Scandinavians, at least at early stage. And I have no idea why. Maybe their educational system, maybe the kind of technical institutes that are involved. I don't know. I don't think it matters so much. I saw this solution in Berkeley, not Berkeley, Berkeley or San Francisco on microgrid. Beautiful solution. It was a leading candidate for solar microgrids about 5 years ago, and he wanted to go global. It's coming out of a big accelerator. I was talking to the head of the renewable nodal agency in Andhra Pradesh at the same time, and he was telling me the big problem they face is theft of copper cables. The guy in San Francisco did not design for this. So I work with a general principle. I've seen a lot of great technology, but technology is not a startup. In fact, that's why we have a lot of failure rates around the world in clean tech, not because of technology, because of it's not a business. So I think the closer you are to a market, closer you are to a business, is more likely you'll succeed. And that is an advantage that we have here in India. We have a massive market. We could innovate from application, you know, and we could then take it to other similar countries throughout Southeast Asia and Africa faster than I think others. So I think even though we may not be the best, at least coming out in early stages, we have the opportunity to rapidly develop quality in what we're doing and really grow fast.
Awesome. Thanks. So you gave us the deal how it is, and also some optimism on how we can become better. Okay, so now I wanted to understand from you. Do you feel that this climate innovation space and climate companies in general, you look at other spaces, you see there is a few big giants that rule that space. Do you think climate is different? In other words, are we likely to see 100 huge companies, or more likely to see millions of smaller companies? If we're going to solve this climate battle, what is it going to look like, at the end of the day?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. In fact, and it's so pertinent today for one reason. Climate entrepreneurship or green business oftentimes is local by context, especially in the waste sector, right? Now, because a lot of our solutions that we're seeing, at least today and probably in the near future, are B2B, I think we're going to see an explosion of hundreds of high quality mid-sized companies coming out. When you're talking, we don't have startups that can leverage network effects like a Facebook or even a Google. When you have everyone coming on, it builds on itself. That's normally more common with B2C solutions, or very IP protected B2B solutions like a chip design that Qualcomm does. So I think what we're going to see is, in fact, in terms of numbers, a large number. And when I go throughout India and I go, I talk to hundreds and dozens, or maybe 100 incubators, accelerators. When I look under the hood, I was at the NIT Trichy last year, and they were telling me that the previous 2 years, 100% of their startups were clean tech startups. Nobody knew this is a clean tech platform, etc. So I think for many reasons, we're going to see a large number of climate entrepreneurs, but maybe not those massive companies like a Facebook, Google, but lots of good, strong companies. And I don't think we should be swayed too much by unicorn. That's not our goal in life. Our goal is to have some success and have impact.
Yeah. So we the Sustainability Mafia, think along similar lines. Now, I'm going to ask a few more questions along that direction. So, one of the things that we feel that India can do, I mean, we have the 21 of the 30 most polluted cities. Could we also have 21 of the 30 most successful clean tech companies anywhere in the world? So I think that probably is not the right question to ask. It's more about, larger number of companies. So now, how does that ecosystem get created, right? We have the playbook for creating 100 big companies, because the investor is going to back the big idea. Then, the entire chain is set up to create 100 massive companies. What does the ecosystem need to do to create millions of smaller, successful companies? How does it need to change, right? And how do you see that evolving over the next 3-4 years to, be able to crack that vision?
Yeah, no, great. Well, I mean, to be honest, building big, massive technology companies that are highly scalable, maybe even global, is even tougher because the risks are extraordinarily high. The game is much more concentrated. Um, Sorry, am I frozen or is it just Arjun?
I think you're moving. It's fine. You're not frozen.
Okay, great. So, so I think the technology space, the venture world, capital world, and startups is a much more difficult space, especially to develop nascent startup ecosystem. Everybody wants to be Silicon Valley, right? No, there are only like 5 or 10 that are comparable in the world. Green entrepreneurship is different. In fact, I hear a lot of conversations on the funding side wanting to say there's too much emphasis on venture capital, right? Maybe because it gets too much press. But in fact, we look at all the waste companies that could build great local waste business. It will not attract venture capital. It doesn't have the same scalability, same exits, speed, etc. But it could have great returns and lower risk, right? So I think that what I'm seeing is that the capacity building programs for entrepreneurship, we have all the skills. I think we just need to kind of make work on the funding side, because without funding, it's very hard for businesses to get to a minimum scale. But I'm pretty hopeful, especially during COVID. The one thing I'm hearing a lot is that the emphasis on resilience, oddly enough, has picked up. So we would expect it with the pandemic. Nobody cares about sustainability, but in fact, there's a sensitivity that's happening. It's an unusual thing. So if that does translate into better support for green entrepreneurship beyond just foundations, that's just not enough, right? And we unlock private capital. I think that the skills we have to do entrepreneurship support, getting those capital into project structures are quite straightforward. It's just the only thing I would add is I've been in India 20 years, and every 5 or 10 years would surprise you or surprise me where India came. So even though we're at early stages in moving capital to green entrepreneurship, local businesses, all that stuff, when I look at, for example, MFIs, microfinance institutes, et cetera, and the speed in which entrepreneurs put things together here, I think everything's aligning to support what you're saying is more local green businesses being supported beyond technology startups as well in Cleantech, for sure.
Amazing. Thanks. I'm going to pick up on your point on resilience. And, this is a slightly different question. So, a lot of people, we have a tendency to really love what we do. And, that's part of the strength of an entrepreneur to really, fight all the battles, keep moving on. Tell us from your experience, when does one quit as an entrepreneur, right? When does one say, okay, I tried, I'm going to move on to something else, game over? How does one know that it's time to move on?
I don't know. Someone should tell me this, maybe. But as you yourself are a clean tech entrepreneur, it's never a straight arrow. This game, any kind of entrepreneurship. I got this advice once a long time ago from someone who said, if you want to be an entrepreneur, this is someone from Silicon Valley, you have to be at bat 6 times. It's not about having the big idea, but really embracing the life, right? And for those who are entrepreneurs, they know what it's really like. A friend of mine, a successful e-commerce startup, 5 years, I think got Series A, maybe Series A, maybe Series B. We were at a party and she told me, you know what? Nobody here knows that I haven't bought anything nice for myself in 5 years, right? That is oftentimes what entrepreneurship is like. It's not as straightforward. WhatsApp, 18 months, exit, done, right? So I think more rather than the idea, it's whether you do like this life. The life that has negatives, of course, of sacrifice, uncertainty. I don't not work many Sundays. No, it's without fail every Saturday and half the Sundays I would have to guess. That's not an uncommon thing for entrepreneurs. But if you do like the positives, the ability to control what the work that you do, the impact you want to create, of course, the ability to have independence, right? And I don't mean you should be a risk junkie, but if you can't accept the level of risk in this life, I think it's more that than your idea. right? So it takes the first startup is always the hardest one, right? As anyone would tell you, it's for all the hopes would come up, and in most cases, it crashes. So oftentimes, great entrepreneurs come out of that rebirth, that second startup or the third one. So I don't know. It's a hard one. It's a personal one. But if you like the life, it's not about your idea or startup. You know. Yeah.
Thank you. That's an amazing answer. Okay, so I think my time is going to be up soon, but I'm going to ask you two more questions. Um, First is, who are, in your mind, the top 5 clean tech investors in India at the moment?
Right. So if you're talking about top, as in where the bigger funds come in, now I do work with a group called Circulate Capital. They're based out of Singapore, but they cover India. It's a Series A fund for waste startups, plastic waste startups, backed by several big FMCG companies. So they're starting to get active in India, and I do like sometimes investors that have this strategic fit, right? Especially if you're a B2B startup, look for investors who either with a strategic fit or have experience in that industry, right? If you're coming earlier, like pre-Series A. We are seeing more and more. I don't want to be too unfair to selecting VCs, but we are seeing more capital being like mobilized around in mobility, for example, at Series A, right? So that's I don't know. Like I said, is these are sometimes independent entities. Venture capitals normally are. So I think one key choice is you may look at independent VCs or corporate VC. I know that P&G just announced a few months ago a 200 crore plastic waste fund. That's a great fit if you're, sorry, not a plastic waste, it's a 200 crore fund, perhaps for plastic waste in other areas that are in P&G's operations. I would look for that if you're B2B, right? In the early stage, this is a question you would ask is what kind of angel investor do you want? And this is more generic, is someone who has to believe in what you're doing, that you get along personality-wise, active versus passive type of investor. I think that's not too different from other sectors. But as you get further, I think strategic investors from industry will be more and more important for most of our clean tech startups. Yeah.
Awesome. So you didn't give me exact names, but you told us about the kinds of investors one should look for. Okay, thank you. Okay, so now, you mentioned the Amazon $2 billion, Microsoft $1 billion, funds. Do you think anybody in India is going to step it up, in the next 2-3 years and come out with another fund like that? Like, either an individual or a company or a fund, do you think there's going to be a huge fund of that size or even similar to that size coming out of India in the next 2 to 3 years?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. If you looked at India VC funds and other sectors 5-7 years ago, the rate in which VC capital extended to India was massive. And for one basic thesis that India and that region is a large market, a lot of the business models are known. A lot of the businesses people invest will be replication, which is also fine in my opinion. So I think what we could see is both global capital coming in, or at least allocations coming in very fast to India. What I'm hearing is a lot of VC funds are being structured right now. So that could be between the 20 million to 50 or 100 million. Whether we get $1 billion funds or not, that's to me that's less material now. We need step up funding coming, but I have no doubt that if the trends we're seeing globally, 6%, right? That's one of our big asset classes. Number of entrepreneurs we're getting, and the India story is powerful for Asia and Africa. It's a great test bed to grow with high quality entrepreneurs to the rest of the region. I think in 2 to 3 years, we will see large capital being put in place for India or by people in India as well.
Awesome. And one last question, Pratap, which is more about you, a little more personal than a general question. What is a goal that you have for yourself for the next 5 years, or what kind of impact are you looking to create? Give us something punchy to remember you by, right? So when we're like, okay, Pratap, that guy who wants to do this, right? So tell us about that.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. Well, okay. We do have ambitious plans. Even nonprofits are startups in that sense. You set your goals and you try to run. So I think our goal by 2023 is to support 2,000 startups a year in India, Africa, Southeast Asia, and maybe this is in the accelerator side. So we have a goal where we want to get as many people supported to be able to get to that next stage where maybe venture comes in or where corporates come in, or maybe they're on their own strong 2 feet. So we want to be throughout this part of the world by 2023 and supporting a large number of entrepreneurs in our program. Yeah.
Awesome. That is great. And I'm pretty sure you're going to get there. Thanks for all the work that you do for sustainability. And thanks for joining us today.
Yeah.
Really
Thank you. Yeah.
You guys for
I love talking.
session, and it was particularly interesting because Pratap, you're an ecosystem designer, and Arjun, you were the question master. So to be asked about clean tech from somebody who's on his way to becoming a clean tech unicorn, that's kind of cool.